Let's talk about the metaverse. This is a complex and very rapidly evolving field. So first of all, I want to say that we're recording this in December 2023. Let's see where we're at today. I'm going to ask a few questions to someone who's been involved in the development of technical standards for digital media for well over 30 years. His career spans across several decades, with numerous highlights, including the co-signature of the coding format MPEG-1 Audio Layer 3, also known as MP3. Welcome, Leonardo Chiariglione, and thank you for speaking to me today.
Thank you, Federica. I will be happy to answer your question to the extent I can.
The reason why we talk about the metaverse today is that recently you have embarked on a new adventure that tackles multimedia and artificial intelligence. You are the president of MPAI, an organization for moving picture, audio and data coding by artificial intelligence. You, along with a cohort of brilliant minds from all over the world, focus, among other things, on the development of standards for the metaverse. Before we get to the standards part, can you tell us what drew you to the metaverse? What's interesting to you about it?
Well, metaverse is an exciting topic. I like to say that telecommunication have evolved through different stages. And every stage has generated new stages. When we had the telephone, we thought about video conference. When we had the video conference, we talked about more sophisticated things. And I like to think that the metaverse is really the next step of digital communication.
And there is one question we cannot elude, although it's a $1 million question that could easily take up the space of a 1-hour conversation. What is the metaverse? What is it to you, or in the understanding that MPAI has of it?
Right. So metaverse is an entity, is a digital entity. It is, say, a computing platform, if you want, that has the ability to sense data perceived from the real world. And the data are brought and transformed into objects in the metaverse. Then, of course, particular types of data are ourselves. So we are objects that the metaverse captures and, in a way, reproduces in the metaverse. So things are happening in the metaverse, and they are happening already today. And the result of these things have an influence back to the real world. So you understand that this simple explanation, teleconference is a metaverse, because it's exactly what I said. There's a machine that captures ourselves, the data are sent to a place, things happen in the place like mixing of audio information, and then we are seeing the result.
The metaverse requires a variety of technologies like VR, wearables, and other devices, not to mention issues related to cybersecurity and sustainability. We cannot be exhaustive today, so I'd like to focus on the application domains of the metaverse. What can the metaverse do for us besides gaming and shopping? The MPAI website lists about 18 use cases for the metaverse, from real estate to remote work to healthcare. Can you talk a little bit about these use cases, or which ones are more interesting to you, or which ones can help people better understand the potential of this buzzword, the metaverse?
Right. When we started working on this topic, and that was almost 2 years ago, we tried to be systematic. So because it is something that everybody talks about, and everybody has an image, and everybody has a definition of what the metaverse is, then we tried to start from where everything should start, from the application. So you have the technology. Actually, we don't have the technology. Not fully. And then, so assuming that we have that technology, what are we going to do of it? Like you say, we have collected a significant number of application domains. Actually, I think it is 18, the number that we have addressed, which doesn't mean that they are only 18. There are more, but this was sufficient to give us confidence that what we would do next, which is, of course, because it is in the mission of MPAI standards, it could actually happen. So you mentioned something interesting. You could have, of course, a more rewarding, more natural experience. So if your brain no longer thinks that it is part of this real world, but it is in a virtual world because I am sitting, not myself, but my avatar, but my brain thinks that it is me sitting next to you and talk. Well, I think that this must be a great experience. Now you can ask, why don't we have it now? Well, it's because before we can really convince the brain that it is no longer in this world, but it is another place. Technology that at the moment we can see, it's like going back in the early days of telephony, at the time of Alexander Graham Bell, and the kind of experience that we have on our smartphones. So I think it's so great. And I want to start with this one. And people who are interested, just go to the MPI.community and look for MPI Metaverse model, and you will have more examples. But I repeat, it must be a really rewarding experience. But I don't like to say far, but we are only working on it, and we are not there yet.
Given that the metaverse is a relatively young concept that's still being explored and experimented with, what inspired you to start working on the development of standards for the metaverse? Isn't it a bit premature, one would say, to introduce standardization in an evolving field such as this? Or is there something that I am missing about the nature and the contribution that standards may have on even pushing the envelope in this field?
Yes, I think you have got exactly the point. And it's also the reason why I think this work of the metaverse is so exciting. For a few decades, as you said, I have been leading hundreds of smart experts developing standards in a lot of areas that had to do with digital media. And, in that case, it was always very clear. Technology existed. We had an application in mind. There was a missing link between the technology and the actual implementation. So here was the standard. Very clear, very simple, very exciting. In the case of Metaverse, we are not at that place. So you're asking rightly, why are you developing standard? Well, it's because, this is the difficult point. If standards have to appear at the right time, because if you are late, then industry will have made their own investment. They have made their own decision. They will not go back because they have spent millions, hundreds of millions possibly in technologies, and they will not throw to the wastebaskets those millions. So how do we solve the problem then? There is no technology. There are applications. People are already starting developing things. And I know that if it will be late, no one will care about our standard. So this is the point. This is explicitly written in the scope of the MPI Metaverse model, which is the third standard that we have produced in this space, where I will say that this is a functional standard. We define what will be the functional requirements of the data that are exchanged between the different entities, say metaverses or clients to service and so on. So we want to say, if you started developing a metaverse, please, it is in your interest, but please do it in such a way that the data that you exchange, of course, now they are based on your technology, but at least they should satisfy the functional requirement, because in that case, it will be possible to have conversion services that take data from one metaverse, convert it to another format that is understandable by another metaverse.
Evidently, this is a tech-driven sector, and the development of new technologies and technological solutions and products goes hand in hand with the registrations of new patents. Can you talk a little bit about the different mindset that people have who decide to invest in standards versus patents?
Right. It depends on which chair you are sitting. Because if you are leading a standard development, you are expected not to be involved in any intellectual property that affects the standards. Because that would be, in my opinion, an unacceptable conflict of interest. On the other hand, the people who are sitting around the table don't have the responsibility of developing the standard, but just contributing to it. I mean, in MPEG, it was probably 90% of them had an interest. And an interest is because, I have been told that when the MPEG-2 standard was developed and it conquered the world in a way that no one had foreseen, patent holders got on average $1 billion in royalties. So you will understand that those people are very much interested in developing a standard. And so the MPEG-2 story was okay. The MPEG-4 story was okay. Things started getting wrong with the HEVC video standard, was the MPEG-H series of standard, because before we had people owning IP, but also interested in products. Nowadays, the people who have IP have no interest at all in developing product. The only interest is that someone else does that so that they can apply royalties. And so now we have broken the link, the holy link that keeps together the interest of IP holders and the interest of people who want to make products and services. So this is a major, major, major problem in technology standardization because of the reason that I said. And it is the reason why part of the MPAI mission is not just to develop data coding standards based on artificial intelligence, but making standard that people can actually use. Because in some standards, patent holders are just playing their game and they are delaying the availability of the standard until they have settled the rate that they wanted to apply and all this kind of things. So this is damaging their interest, but they are playing on hundreds of tables. So they don't care if they don't have revenues for a few years on one table, because they have a lot of others that where they have revenues flowing. So this is very much a big problem, and this is how MPAI addressed the solution.
You've been very gracious with your time today, Leonardo, and I have one last question for you. During this interview, you've touched on some of the reasons why standards matter. But we've also learned that the adoption of a standard is desirable yet not obligatory. So anyone around the world could design, build, and sell anything without adopting one of your standards, which are so much work to make. We didn't even go into how a standard becomes a standard and the amount of paperwork that goes into it or the processes. So in the light of this, Leonardo, what keeps you motivated? What's the driver in putting in all of this hard work?
You're right. I think that standards should, in most cases, they are standards that should be mandatory or mandated by law or some regulation. But in general, they should be freely selected. And so you're asking why I am putting so much energy? Well, because when I started the MPEG adventure And that was the year 1988, which is quite a long time ago. My idea was, we have been working with different technologies, chemical, mechanical, electrical. Now we are going to a new age, which is digital-based. There is a green field where no one put their steps on it. So we must, I said to myself, the mission to make sure that in the digital world, standards existed so that people could communicate without barriers. So that was my idea. Now, I left MPEG. MPEG now no longer exists, even though some people think that it still exists, because that was the end. I mean, MPEG was the product of a different age, but now we have a new age. We have artificial intelligence, which, again, I certainly cannot say that it's a green field, but it's still time to provide a standard that will enable people to exchange information between themselves, maybe not just people, but also people and machine, or maybe machines and machines. So that is the reason that drives me into this new adventure.
Thank you so much, Leonardo, for speaking to me today. Is there anything else you wish to tell our audience, a take-home message or something you didn't get a chance to say?
Well, I think that people should appreciate the value of standards, even though the value of standards is better appreciated when you don't understand that there is a standard behind what you are using. Because the fact that today you can watch any video coming from anywhere, and all this is based on standards. And I am not saying what standard they are, but they are standards. And the fact that you can communicate without even noticing that there is a standard, that's the best result of those who have developed those standards.
To learn more about the metaverse and make up your mind on whether this is just a trending topic on the decline or the natural evolution of the internet space, you can look at it from different angles. Go to Google Scholar and see how many research papers deal with the metaverse. Just Google metaverse or search it on YouTube. Read about it on Wired and magazines like the Business Insider, or simply ask your friends. Ask what they think and what they know about the metaverse. I'm sure that some of the answers are going to be really interesting. If you want to share some, drop them in the comments below. Remember, it's important to stir up the conversation and keep it going. Thanks for watching, and until next time.